The woman in the elegant white dress stands frozen, hands covering her mouth in shock as she watches the scene unfold before her. Across the luxurious penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a man in a sharp black suit and his companion in a striking red dress point and laugh in her direction. This is not just any office humiliation. This is the moment Dr. Molly Thornton realizes her husband of 15 years has chosen his mistress over her. What Alexander Thornton does not know as he publicly celebrates his betrayal is that the devastated woman he just fired holds the one signature that could make or break the biggest business deal of the century. In 72 hours, he will stand before the world's cameras to finalize a $500 billion merger. And the only person who can approve it is the wife he just destroyed. 15 years ago, Alexander Thornton was a hungry young entrepreneur with big dreams and a small tech startup operating out of a garage in Silicon Valley. He had charisma, ambition, and a vision that sounded brilliant in pitch meetings but fell apart under scrutiny. Dr. Molly Chun was something entirely different. She was a brilliant MIT graduate with a doctorate in international business strategy and fluency in 7 languages. She was not just book smart. Molly had an intuitive understanding of global markets and cross-cultural negotiations that made her invaluable in any boardroom where she chose to sit. When they met at a technology conference in Boston, the connection was electric. Alex was captivated not just by her striking beauty, but by her mind. During their first conversation over coffee that stretched into dinner, Molly casually dissected his entire business model with surgical precision and showed him 3 pivot strategies that could multiply his revenue tenfold within 2 years. He proposed 6 months later on a beach in Malibu, but it was never just romance. It was the most strategic partnership of his life, though only one of them understood the full weight of what that meant. What the world never knew was that Thornton Global Industries was not built by Alexander Thornton alone. While Alex became the charismatic face of the company, making headlines and gracing the covers of Fortune and Forbes, Molly was the strategic mastermind operating behind the curtain. Every major acquisition that analysts praised as visionary, every international expansion that opened new revenue streams, every crisis averted before it could damage their reputation, Molly's fingerprints were all over it, invisible to everyone except those who knew where to look. She negotiated their first major contract with Japanese manufacturers when Alex's aggressive American negotiating style nearly torpedoed the deal. She spent 3 months learning the nuances of Japanese business culture, understanding the importance of relationship building over hard selling, and salvaged a partnership that would become the foundation of their manufacturing empire. She identified the emerging markets in Southeast Asia years before their competitors, building relationships with power brokers from Shanghai to Singapore, from Seoul to Mumbai. These were not transactional business contacts. They were deep, trust-based relationships built over years of genuine respect, cultural understanding, and Molly's impeccable reputation for integrity in an industry that often valued profit over principle. But Molly made one critical mistake, the kind that seems insignificant until it costs you everything. She let Alex take all the credit. She preferred working behind the scenes, believing their marriage was a true partnership where individual recognition did not matter. She held no official position in the executive suite, working instead as a special advisor to the CEO to avoid accusations of nepotism. On paper, to the outside world and even to many inside the company, she was just the CEO's wife. In reality, she was the invisible architect of a $50 billion empire built on strategy she designed and relationships she cultivated. For 15 years, this arrangement worked. Alex basked in the spotlight while Molly wielded influence from the shadows. They lived a life most people only dream about, a penthouse overlooking the city, private jets to global destinations, galas where they rubbed shoulders with presidents and prime ministers. They were the golden couple of the business world, proof that you could have both love and success. But something shifted in Alex over those years. The constant validation, the magazine covers, the fawning profiles that called him a self-made genius, it all fed something hungry inside him. He began to believe his own mythology. He started to crave not just success but worship. And Molly, brilliant and strategic in every arena except understanding how deeply her sacrifice would be taken for granted, did not see the danger until it was far too late. The foundation of everything Molly and Alex built together was about to crack. And the fracture would not come from market forces or corporate rivals. It would come from a 29-year-old woman in a red dress who understood exactly how to exploit the weakness in their empire. The countdown to betrayal had already begun. The only question was whether Molly would see it coming before the walls came crashing down. The Boston Technology Conference in early spring 15 years ago was one of those overstuffed industry events where ambitious entrepreneurs competed for attention like peacocks displaying their feathers. Alexander Thornton was working the room with the intensity of a man who knew he had exactly one shot to make his startup matter. At 28, he had the kind of charisma that made people lean in when he spoke, the kind of energy that suggested he was always on the verge of something extraordinary. His presentation on cloud-based infrastructure solutions had been adequate, competent even, but it lacked the strategic depth that would attract serious investors. Molly noticed this immediately. She was sitting 3 rows back during his pitch, her dark eyes scanning not just his slides but the reactions of the venture capitalists in the front row. She watched them check their phones during his financial projections. She saw them exchange skeptical glances when he outlined his go-to-market strategy. And she knew exactly why. His business model was built on assumptions about Asian manufacturing partnerships that revealed he had never actually negotiated with an Asian company in his life. When the presentation ended with polite applause, Molly watched Alex work the room during the cocktail reception that followed. He was good at it, she had to admit. He had that particular gift of making whoever he was talking to feel like the most important person in the world. But she also noticed how quickly the serious investors extracted themselves from conversations with him, how they smiled and nodded and promised to be in touch in that specific way that meant they had already moved on. She debated whether to approach him at all. Molly had not come to Boston looking for romance or even new professional connections. She had delivered a keynote that morning on cross-cultural negotiation strategies in emerging markets that had received a standing ovation. She was fielding offers from 3 different consulting firms. She did not need to rescue some struggling entrepreneur with more confidence than strategic sense. But something about the way Alex's shoulders dropped slightly when another investor walked away made her set down her wine glass and cross the room. "Your problem is not your technology," she said by way of introduction. "Your problem is that you are trying to build partnerships in markets you do not understand." Alex turned, and for just a moment she saw irritation flash across his face before his professional smile clicked into place. "I'm sorry, are you with one of the VC firms?" "No. I am someone who actually works in the markets you are trying to penetrate. Dr. Molly Chun. I delivered the keynote this morning on international business strategy." Recognition dawned. "Right, I missed it. I was doing run-throughs of my presentation." "That is unfortunate. You might have learned something useful." She was not normally this direct, but something about his easy confidence made her want to shake him a little. "You told those investors that you could secure manufacturing partnerships in Shenzhen and Taipei that would cut your production costs by 40%. Do you have any relationships with manufacturers in those cities?" "Well, not yet, but..." "And your market entry timeline assumes you can navigate regulatory approval in 6 different Asian countries simultaneously. Have you worked with regulatory bodies in any of those markets before?" Alex's jaw tightened. "Look, I appreciate the feedback, but..." "You have a good product," Molly continued, her voice softening slightly. "Your cloud infrastructure solution actually solves a real problem. But your investors saw the same thing I saw. You are a smart American entrepreneur who thinks intelligence and confidence will be enough to succeed in markets where relationship and cultural understanding matter more than either. You will fail, not because your technology is weak, but because you are approaching partnership like a transaction instead of a relationship." There was a long moment where Alex just stared at her, and Molly wondered if she had pushed too hard. She had a habit of being too blunt, of forgetting that not everyone wanted honest feedback when they were still nursing wounds from a disappointing pitch. Then Alex laughed. It was genuine, surprised, the kind of laugh that comes when someone unexpected tells you an uncomfortable truth you already suspected. "Okay. You are absolutely right. I have no idea what I am doing when it comes to international partnerships. I was hoping I could figure it out along the way. That strategy will cost you years and hundreds of thousands of dollars you do not have. So what would you do differently?" Molly glanced at her watch. She had a dinner meeting with a potential client in 40 minutes. But something about the way Alex was looking at her now, not with wounded pride but with genuine curiosity, made her pause. "Do you have time for coffee?" That coffee stretched into 3 hours. They moved from the hotel lobby to a quiet corner cafe where Molly pulled out a notepad and sketched out what a realistic international expansion strategy might look like. She explained the importance of hiring cultural liaisons, of spending months building relationships before trying to close deals, of understanding that in many Asian business cultures, trust was currency more valuable than money. Alex listened with an intensity that surprised her. He asked smart questions. He admitted what he did not know. And somewhere during that conversation, Molly realized she was not just teaching. She was imagining. She was seeing the potential of what his technology could become if it was paired with the right strategic approach. "Why are you helping me?" Alex asked finally, his coffee long since gone cold. "You do not know me. I cannot afford to hire you as a consultant. What do you get out of this?" Molly considered the question. "Honestly, I am not sure. Maybe I am tired of watching good ideas fail because of strategic incompetence. Maybe I see potential. Or maybe I just enjoy solving problems." "Well, whatever the reason, thank you. This has been the most useful 3 hours I have spent in months." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "And for the record, you're significantly more interesting than the people who just wanted to tell me my presentation was great." "Your presentation was not great. It was mediocre with flashes of genuine insight buried under poor strategic planning." "See, that is what I am talking about. Refreshingly honest." They exchanged business cards. Alex promised to stay in touch. Molly assumed she would never hear from him again, that this had been one of those brief conference connections that felt meaningful in the moment but evaporated in the reality of busy schedules and different cities. She was wrong. 3 days later, Alex called her. Not to ask for free advice, but to offer her a proposition. "I have been thinking about what you said. About partnership and strategy. And I realized something. I do not need a consultant. I need a partner. Someone who understands international markets the way I understand technology. Someone who can build the relationships while I build the product." "You are offering me a job?" "I am offering you equity. 20% of the company. Co-founder title. We build this thing together, properly, the way you described. I bring the technology and the vision. You bring the strategy and the global relationships. 50-50 partnership on all major decisions." Molly was quiet for a long moment. She had 3 solid job offers, all of which paid significantly more than a risky startup equity position. "Alex, you barely know me. We had one conversation. Best conversation I have had in years. Look, I know it sounds crazy, but I have learned to trust my instincts about people. And my instinct says you are the missing piece I have been looking for. At least come out to Palo Alto. See the operation. Meet the team. If you think I am insane, you can go take one of those consulting jobs and forget we ever talked." 2 weeks later, Molly stood in Alex's garage-turned office in Silicon Valley, looking at whiteboards covered in code and infrastructure diagrams, meeting a scrappy team of 5 engineers who were building something genuinely innovative. And she felt something she had not expected to feel: excitement. Not just about the business potential, but about the challenge. About the possibility of building something from the ground up, of proving that strategic brilliance mattered as much as technological innovation. "Okay," she said finally. "I am in. But we do this right. No shortcuts. No assuming we can figure out international partnerships on the fly. We build relationships first, revenue second." Alex extended his hand. "Deal." They shook on it, and neither of them could have predicted that this professional partnership would shift into something more within months. Neither of them could have imagined standing in a small chapel in Napa Valley 8 months later, promising forever to each other in front of family and friends who wondered if they were moving too fast but could not deny the obvious chemistry between them. "You are sure about this?" Molly's sister Jennifer had asked the night before the wedding. "Mixing business and marriage? That seems like a lot of pressure." "It does not feel like pressure," Molly had replied, adjusting her veil in the mirror. It feels like we are building something together. Something bigger than either of us could build alone. And for a while, that was exactly what it felt like. The first 2 years were a beautiful chaos of 18-hour workdays and stolen moments of intimacy between investor meetings. Molly proved her worth immediately, securing their first major manufacturing partnership with a Taiwanese company after 3 months of patient relationship building. When Alex wanted to charge into negotiations with aggressive terms, Molly taught him the art of listening, of understanding what the other party valued beyond just financial terms. Their first major breakthrough came during the 2012 tech boom. While other startups were burning through cash trying to scale too quickly, Molly's strategic approach kept them lean and focused. She identified a gap in the Southeast Asian market that their competitors had overlooked: small and medium-sized businesses that needed cloud infrastructure but could not afford enterprise-level solutions. She built partnerships with telecommunications companies in Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, creating a distribution network that let them scale rapidly without the massive marketing costs their competitors were absorbing. Alex was brilliant at articulating the vision, at inspiring the team, at convincing investors that Thornton Global Industries was going to change the industry. But it was Molly who actually built the roadmap to get them there. By 2015, they had grown from a garage operation to a legitimate player in the cloud infrastructure space. They had offices in 5 countries. They had 200 employees. And they were on the verge of going public when the stock market crashed, sending tech valuations into a tailspin and making their planned IPO impossible. Alex panicked. Molly watched him pace their penthouse apartment at 3 a.m, talking about layoffs and selling the company and cutting their losses before they lost everything. She listened patiently, then pulled out her laptop and showed him an alternative strategy she had been developing for weeks. "We do not retreat," she said calmly. "We pivot. Every one of our competitors is going to pull back right now, which means there is an opportunity. We go to our existing partners, the ones we have spent years building trust with, and we offer them preferential terms to expand their contracts. We show them that we are stable when everyone else is panicking. We use this moment to deepen relationships, not abandon them. That is insane. We will burn through our cash reserves. We will burn through half our cash reserves. And in 18 months, when the market stabilizes, we will be the only company in our space that maintained our partnerships through the crisis. Our competitors will spend years trying to rebuild what they are about to destroy." Alex stared at her. "You have really thought this through." "I have thought about almost nothing else for 3 weeks." He trusted her. And she was right. When the market recovered in 2017, Thornton Global Industries emerged stronger than ever, with partnerships that their competitors could not match and a reputation for stability that made them the preferred choice for risk-averse enterprise clients. They finally went public in 2018. The IPO was a massive success, valuing the company at $15 billion and making both Alex and Molly extraordinarily wealthy on paper. That night, in a 5-star hotel suite overlooking Times Square where they had watched their stock ticker on the NASDAQ display, Alex pulled Molly close and whispered, "We did it. Everything we dreamed about." "We did," she agreed, feeling genuinely happy, genuinely proud of what they had built together. But even then, there were small signs of what was coming. The photographer from Forbes wanted individual shots of Alex, the self-made tech CEO. The profile that ran the following month mentioned Molly exactly once, in a sidebar that described her as the brilliant wife who supports his vision. When Molly pointed out to Alex that the article had fundamentally misrepresented who had built their international partnerships, he had kissed her forehead and said, "Does it really matter? We know the truth. That is what counts." She had let it go. That was her pattern. Let it go. Stay behind the scenes. Believe that their private partnership was what mattered, not public recognition. Over the next 5 years, as Thornton Global Industries grew from $15 billion to $50 billion in valuation, that pattern deepened. Alex became the face on magazine covers, the keynote speaker at industry conferences, the CEO that business schools wrote case studies about. Molly remained special advisor to the CEO, a title that sounded important but carried no official authority and earned her no public recognition for the strategies she continued to design. She negotiated their expansion into the Indian market. She salvaged their relationship with a major Chinese partner after Alex made culturally insensitive comments in a press interview. She identified the acquisition targets that filled gaps in their service offerings. She built a network of relationships across Asia that was unmatched in their industry. And Alex accepted all the credit with the easy comfort of someone who had started to believe he actually had built this empire alone. Their marriage shifted in subtle ways. They still loved each other, or at least Molly believed they did. But the partnership that had once felt equal began to feel hierarchical. Alex made decisions and informed her afterward. He stopped asking for her strategic input on major moves, assuming he had absorbed enough of her wisdom over the years to make smart choices on his own. He had not. By their 15th anniversary, they were wealthy beyond measure and powerful beyond what either of them had imagined in that Boston coffee shop. But they were also something else. They were a CEO who believed his own mythology and a strategic genius who had made herself invisible. Neither of them saw Vanessa Reed coming. Neither of them understood that Alex's growing need for validation and Molly's growing invisibility had created the perfect conditions for someone ambitious and ruthless to drive a wedge between them. The empire they had built together was about to fracture. And the fault lines had been there all along, hidden beneath success and wealth and the comfortable lie that private partnership could survive public erasure. Molly would look back on these years later and wonder when exactly she had lost herself. Was it the first time she let Alex take credit for her strategy? Was it the decision to remain a special advisor instead of demanding an executive title? Was it every moment she chose partnership over recognition, believing love meant sacrifice instead of mutual respect? The answer, she would eventually understand, was all of it. Every small choice, every quiet surrender, every time she told herself that visibility did not matter as long as the work got done. Those choices had built an empire, but they had also built her prison. And the walls were about to close in completely. Vanessa Reed walked into Thornton Global Industries headquarters on a crisp Monday morning 2 years ago with a kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly what you want and exactly how to get it. At 29, she had already worked at 3 major tech companies, moving up quickly not just because she was good at her job, but because she was exceptional at understanding power dynamics and positioning herself advantageously within them. Her official title was Senior Marketing Executive, a role she was genuinely qualified for with an MBA from Northwestern and a track record of successful product launches. But Vanessa had not taken this job because she was passionate about cloud infrastructure marketing. She had taken it because she had done her research, and Alexander Thornton was exactly the kind of target she had been looking for. Her first week, she spent more time observing than contributing. She watched how the executive team interacted, who deferred to whom, where the real power lived versus where the title suggested it should live. And she noticed something interesting. The CEO's wife was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Dr. Molly Thornton attended executive meetings but rarely spoke unless directly asked. She reviewed strategic documents, but her name appeared on nothing official. She took calls from international partners in languages Vanessa did not speak, conversations that seemed important but generated no visible credit. Vanessa watched Alex in these meetings, saw how he presented strategies and ideas with total confidence, never once attributing them to anyone else. The dynamic fascinated her. Here was a woman who clearly had significant influence but zero visibility. And here was a man who had all the visibility and was starting to believe he deserved all the credit. Vanessa had built her career on identifying and exploiting exactly this kind of imbalance. She started small. Staying late when she knew Alex worked late, making sure to pass by his office looking busy and dedicated, asking him for advice on projects in a way that made him feel like a mentor, a genius, someone whose wisdom was invaluable. She studied his patterns, his preferences, the way he lit up when someone praised his vision and strategic thinking. "I just have to say, Mr. Thornton," she said one evening about 6 weeks into her tenure, stopping by his office with a tablet showing campaign analytics, "the way you positioned our expansion into the South American market was brilliant. The messaging strategy you developed cut through all the noise. I have been studying your approach because I want to learn how to think strategically at that level." Alex looked up from his computer, and Vanessa saw the flash of pleasure in his expression. "Well, thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate that. Strategic positioning is really about understanding cultural nuances and market timing." "Exactly. That is what I find so impressive about your approach. You have this global perspective that most CEOs just do not have. She watched him absorb the praise, watched him sit up a little straighter. It was almost too easy. Over the next few months, Vanessa became a fixture in Alex's orbit. She volunteered for projects that would put her in meetings with him. She dressed carefully, professionally, but with just enough style to be memorable. She laughed at his jokes, asked thoughtful questions about his vision for the company, and made him feel like the genius the magazine profile said he was. She also paid attention to Molly, studying her rival from a distance. Molly was beautiful in an understated way, elegant and intelligent, but she dressed conservatively and seemed almost uncomfortable with attention. At company events, Molly stood beside Alex but rarely spoke, content to let him shine. Vanessa noticed that Alex rarely introduced Molly as anything more than my wife, never mentioning her doctorate or her role in the company. The marriage looked solid on the surface, but Vanessa had learned to see beneath surfaces. She noticed that Alex and Molly rarely touched in public anymore. She noticed that they often arrived at company events separately, citing scheduling conflicts. She noticed that when Molly did offer strategic input in meetings, Alex sometimes talked over her or moved on without acknowledgement. 6 months into her employment, Vanessa made her first truly calculated move. Richard James, the CFO and Alex's closest friend, was hosting a small dinner party for the executive team. Vanessa engineered a conversation with Alex about emerging markets, deliberately bringing up challenges in the European expansion. "I know the official strategy is to enter through Germany first," she said, "but I keep thinking about what you said last month about the UK market being more receptive to our messaging. Have you considered pivoting the approach?" It was actually Molly's strategy to enter through Germany, something Vanessa had learned from reviewing internal documents. But she phrased it as if it was company consensus that Alex might disagree with. "You know, I have had the same thought," Alex said, warming to the topic. "Germany is the logical choice on paper, but the UK gives us English language advantage and cultural similarities that would accelerate adoption." Across the table, Molly set down her wine glass carefully. The UK market is already saturated with competitors. Germany offers an underserved mid-market segment that aligns perfectly with our service offerings. We have spent 8 months building relationships with German partners specifically because— "I understand the rationale," Alex interrupted, "but sometimes you have to be willing to challenge conventional wisdom. Vanessa is right that there are advantages to the UK approach we should not dismiss." Vanessa watched Molly's face carefully. There was a flash of hurt, quickly masked, and then Molly simply nodded and changed the subject. But Vanessa had seen what she needed to see. Alex could be turned against his wife's judgment. He could be made to feel that disagreeing with her was a sign of independent thinking rather than foolishness. The London business trip 18 months ago was the turning point Vanessa had been engineering. A major European tech conference, a week of meetings and networking, and Vanessa had made absolutely certain she was essential to the delegation. She positioned herself as the lead on the European marketing strategy, which meant she was in every meeting, every dinner, every late-night strategy session with Alex. Molly had not come on the trip. There was a family emergency, her father's sudden hospitalization, and she had stayed in California to be with her family. Vanessa saw the opportunity and took it without hesitation. On the third night, after a successful presentation to potential European partners, Vanessa suggested they celebrate with dinner at an exclusive restaurant in Mayfair. She had made reservations weeks in advance, just in case the opportunity arose. She wore a dress that was expensive and eye-catching, red because she had noticed Alex's eyes following women in bold colors at company events. Over dinner, she asked him about his journey, his vision, his challenges. She listened with a kind of focused attention that made him feel like the most interesting person in the world. And she carefully, systematically fed his ego with exactly what he needed to hear. "You know what I find fascinating," she said over dessert and expensive wine. "You built this entire empire essentially on your own. I mean, I know you have a great team, but the vision, the strategy, the execution, that was all you." Well, Molly has certainly been supportive. Of course, having a supportive wife is important. But let's be honest, you are the one making the decisions that matter. You are the one with the instincts that have built a $50 billion company. That does not come from having support. That comes from being exceptional. She watched his face, saw the way he absorbed this narrative, the way it fits so perfectly with what he wanted to believe about himself. After dinner, walking back to the hotel through London's glittering streets, Alex was relaxed and talkative in a way Vanessa had not seen before. When they reached the hotel lobby, she made her move with perfect calculated timing. "I am not ready for the night to end," she said, her voice low and intimate. "Would you like to come up for a drink? I have a bottle of excellent scotch in my room, and I would love to hear more about your vision for the Asian expansion." She saw the moment of hesitation, the flicker of awareness that this was a line he had not crossed before. But she also saw the desire in his eyes, the temptation of being wanted and admired and told he was extraordinary. "Just one drink," he said. They both knew it would not be just one drink. The affair began that night in a luxury hotel room overlooking the Thames. And Vanessa made absolutely certain that it continued with careful, strategic precision when they returned to California. She was never pushy, never demanded anything, never made scenes. She simply made herself available and desirable and full of admiration for a man who had grown accustomed to his wife's partnership but had started to crave worship instead. Over the following months, Vanessa documented their relationship carefully through social media, never posting anything explicitly compromising but creating a trail of breadcrumbs that suggested intimacy. Photos of expensive restaurants with captions like "celebrating success with the best team." Pictures from business trips where she stood just a little too close to Alex in group shots. Check-ins at luxury hotels when they were both traveling. She studied Molly's social media too, noting how rarely Molly posted anything, how absent she was from public visibility. It made Vanessa's strategy even easier. She was becoming the visible woman beside Alex, while Molly remained invisible. Richard James noticed, of course. The CFO had known Alex for 15 years, had been at their wedding, considered both Alex and Molly friends. 6 months into the affair, Richard pulled Alex aside after a board meeting. "We need to talk about Vanessa Reed." "What about her?" "She is doing excellent work on the European expansion." "Alex, come on. I am not blind. Neither is anyone else in this company. You are having an affair with a subordinate, which is a massive HR liability, and you are doing it in a way that is humiliating to Molly. I do not know what you think you have seen. I have seen you disappear into her office for hours. I have seen the hotel charges on the company card. I have seen the way you look at her and the way you have stopped looking at Molly." Richard's voice was frustrated, almost pleading. "Molly is your partner. She built this company with you. She is the reason half our international relationships exist. What are you doing?" Alex's face hardened. "My personal life is not your concern. Your personal life becomes my concern when it threatens this company. And your marriage to Molly is not just personal, it is professional. Do you have any idea how many of our Asian partners deal with this company because they trust her? If you blow up your marriage publicly, you could blow up relationships that are worth billions. I think you are being dramatic. I think you are being an idiot." Richard stood up, his usual calm demeanor cracking. "I am your friend, Alex. I am telling you this because I care about you and because I do not want to watch you destroy everything you have built for some affair with a woman who is clearly using you." "Using me?" Alex laughed, but it sounded defensive. "Vanessa admires me. She sees my value. She does not treat me like some accessory to be managed." "Is that what you think Molly does? Manages you? She built half this empire, Alex. She is the strategic brain you have been taking credit for. And you are about to throw that away for someone who tells you what you want to hear." Alex stood up, ending the conversation. "I think we are done here. My marriage is my business. Focus on your own responsibilities." Richard tried once more, a few weeks later, forwarding Alex an article about the legal and financial risks of workplace affairs. Alex responded with a curt email telling him to drop it. Richard, frustrated and worried, eventually stopped trying. He could not make Alex see what he was refusing to see. Meanwhile, Vanessa continued her careful campaign. She suggested to Alex that Molly held him back, that his wife's cautious approach to business was limiting his potential. She planted seeds of resentment about how much credit Molly received in private while Alex received all the public recognition, framing it as if Molly was somehow taking advantage of him rather than the reverse. "I just think you could do so much more if you did not have to run every decision past someone who is not even officially part of the executive team," Vanessa said one evening in Alex's office. "You are the CEO. You are the visionary. Why do you need permission?" "It is not permission exactly. Molly has strong opinions about international strategy. Opinions she developed based on relationships you gave her access to through your company. You made her relevant, Alex. Never forget that." It was a complete rewriting of history, but Alex, deep in the throes of an affair and an ego crisis, wanted to believe it. He wanted to believe he was the sole architect of his success. He wanted to believe that leaving Molly would be liberation rather than suicide. 1 month ago, Vanessa delivered her ultimatum. They were in her apartment, a sleek downtown loft that Alex had helped her afford through generous salary increases he justified as performance bonuses. She had planned this moment carefully, waiting until the affair had lasted long enough that Alex was emotionally invested but not so long that it had become routine. "I cannot do this anymore," she said, her voice trembling with perfectly calibrated emotion. "I cannot be your secret. I cannot watch you go home to her while I wait here like I am something shameful. I love you, Alex. But I need to know that I am not just some affair. I need to know that you see a future with me." "Vanessa." "No, let me finish. I am 29 years old. I am building a career. I am not going to waste my youth being someone's mistress. So you need to choose. If you want a future with me, a real future where we can be together publicly, where I can stand beside you as your partner, then you need to end your marriage. And you need to show everyone, especially her, that you have moved on. You want me to divorce Molly. I want you to choose the life you actually want instead of staying in a marriage that is clearly over. When was the last time you and Molly were actually happy? When was the last time she made you feel valued, admired, desired? I make you feel those things. I see your worth. I celebrate your success. Is not that what you deserve?" She watched him wrestle with the decision, watched him convince himself that this was about following his heart rather than feeding his ego. She knew she had one when he reached for her hand and said, "You are right. I deserve to be happy. We deserve to be happy together." "Then show me. I do not want a quiet divorce. I do not want to wait months while lawyers handle everything discreetly. I want everyone to know that you chose me, that I won." It was a telling choice of words, "I won," but Alex was too far gone to notice. He was already imagining his new life with a younger woman who worshipped him, free from a wife who reminded him of responsibilities and strategic realities he no longer wanted to face. He started planning Molly's termination and their divorce as a single dramatic event. Vanessa encouraged it, helped him choreograph it, picked out the red dress she would wear to their victory celebration. She even insisted on the location, his penthouse office, the seat of his power, where Molly would be reminded of everything she was losing. What neither Alex nor Vanessa knew was that their elaborate betrayal was about to collide with a contractual reality that would transform Molly from victim to power broker. They did not know that Gerald Cooper, the chairman of Pacific Horizon Group, had specifically structured the $500 billion merger to require Molly's approval because he understood what Alex had forgotten. Molly Thornton was not just the CEO's wife. She was the strategic foundation upon which the entire empire rested. Vanessa had studied power dynamics her entire career. She had identified targets and executed strategies and climbed ladders by understanding who held real power versus who just appeared to. But she had made one critical miscalculation. She had assumed that visibility equaled power and invisibility equaled weakness. She was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody sees coming. And Molly Thornton, invisible for 15 years, was about to become very, very visible indeed. The countdown to the merger signing had begun. And Vanessa, for all her strategic brilliance, had no idea that she had just positioned herself for the most spectacular failure of her career. 6 months ago, Gerald Cooper arrived at Thornton Global Industries with a proposal that would reshape the business landscape. His Pacific Horizon Group controlled manufacturing, technology, and renewable energy across Asia, a conglomerate worth hundreds of billions. The merger he proposed would create a $500 billion supercorporation. But Gerald was old school. 40 years in business had taught him that flash faded but substance endured. He had worked with countless ambitious CEOs who burned bright and crashed hard. Alexander Thornton impressed him moderately. Dr. Molly Thornton had earned his complete trust. Over 10 years, Molly had negotiated joint ventures with Pacific Horizon subsidiaries. She learned Mandarin to communicate directly with his Shanghai team. She spent weeks in Hong Kong understanding his corporate philosophy. When conflicts arose, she found solutions that honored relationships over profit margins. Gerald valued integrity above everything, and Molly embodied it completely. When his legal team drafted the merger agreement, Gerald insisted on one non-negotiable clause buried in the dense contract: dual approval required. The deal needed signatures from Thornton Global's CEO and from Dr. Molly Thornton, designated specifically as Special Strategic Advisor with final approval authority on international partnerships. His lawyers questioned the unusual structure. Gerald was firm. Alexander Thornton may run the company, but Molly Thornton built the bridges we are actually buying. Without her signature, there is no deal. When presented with the contract, Alex skimmed through hundreds of pages, his attention focused on valuation numbers and press conference timing. Richard James noticed the dual approval clause and raised concerns. "Alex, this requires both your signature and Molly's. That is unusual. We should discuss." "It is fine," Alex interrupted, distracted by Vanessa's text message. "It is just Molly. She will sign whatever I need her to sign. She always does." Richard opened his mouth to object, then closed it. He had already tried warning Alex about Vanessa. His friend was not listening to anyone anymore. The contracts were signed with that clause intact. Gerald returned to Hong Kong satisfied that he had protected the partnership that actually mattered. Alex started planning his triumphant announcement, the moment that would cement his legacy as a visionary who built a $500 billion empire. Neither man knew that in 6 months, that single clause would become the most important sentence in the entire agreement. Neither understood that Molly's invisible signature would suddenly become the most powerful weapon in the building. The morning started normally. Molly received Alex's email requesting a meeting about the Pacific Horizon final details. She chose her elegant white dress, styled her hair carefully, and prepared notes about ongoing negotiations with Gerald's team regarding technology integration protocols. She noticed Alex had been distant lately, attributed it to stress about the merger. She had no idea Vanessa Reed would be in his office, draped in red like a victory flag. When Molly walked into the penthouse office, the world tilted sideways. Vanessa stood beside Alex's desk wearing the necklace Molly had admired in a jewelry store window 3 weeks ago. The same necklace she had pointed out to Alex, hoping he might remember their anniversary. Now it hung around another woman's neck like a trophy. "I am making some changes," Alex announced, his voice cold and rehearsed. "Your services as an advisor are no longer needed. Vanessa will be taking over all strategic initiatives." "Oh, and Molly? We are done. I have filed for divorce." Vanessa laughed, sharp and cruel. "Finally. Do you know how exhausting it has been watching you pretend to be relevant? Alex built this empire. You just rode his success and acted like you contributed something." Molly stood frozen, hands rising to cover her mouth in pure shock. This could not be happening. This was not real. "The boring wife gets replaced," Vanessa continued, pointing at Molly like she was demonstrating a lesson. "That is how the world works. You had your time. Now it is my turn beside a real billionaire." Alex watched with an expression Molly did not recognize, satisfaction mixed with something like relief. He was enjoying this. He had planned this public humiliation deliberately. Security appeared at the door. Alex must have called them before she even arrived. "Please escort Ms. Chen out of the building," Alex said, using her maiden name like their 15-year marriage had already been erased. "She no longer has access to any Thornton Global facilities." The elevator descent felt endless. Molly saw employees staring, whispering. By tomorrow, everyone would know. The invisible wife, finally discarded completely. In her car in the parking garage, Molly sat motionless for 20 minutes. Then the tears came, wrenching, devastating sobs for the marriage she thought was partnership, for the man she had loved, for 15 years of building someone else's dream while erasing her own. But underneath the grief, something else was stirring. Something steel-edged and quietly furious. She had given everything. And he had taken everything, including her dignity. Not anymore. Molly spent the first night at her sister Jennifer's house, unable to face the penthouse she had decorated, the life she had built. Jennifer held her while she cried, then asked the question that would change everything. "Molly, what does this mean for the Pacific Horizon deal?" Molly had been so devastated she had not even considered it. But now, sitting in her sister's kitchen at 2 in the morning, she pulled out her personal copy of the merger contract and found Clause 47.b. Dual approval required. Her signature was mandatory. Meanwhile, Alex and Vanessa celebrated publicly. Paparazzi photos showed them at exclusive restaurants, Vanessa's hand possessively on Alex's arm. Social media erupted with speculation and gossip. Business journalists wrote sympathetic profiles of the billionaire CEO finally finding happiness. Richard James tried repeatedly to reach Alex. "We need to talk about the merger signing. There is something critical you have overlooked." Alex dismissed him. "I am handling it, Richard. For once, I do not need advice from people who want to hold me back." "Alex, this is not about holding you back. This is about a legal requirement that—" "Enough. I am done with people questioning my decisions." Margaret Hayes, a board member and Molly's longtime mentor, reached Molly on day 2. "I heard what happened. I am so sorry. But Molly, we need to discuss what this means professionally. I do not have a position anymore. He fired me." "He fired you from an informal advisory role. He cannot fire you from contractual obligations. Have you read the Pacific Horizon Agreement recently?" That afternoon, Molly studied every word of the contract with new eyes. Gerald Cooper had protected her. Whether he anticipated this exact betrayal or simply insisted on her involvement because he trusted her judgment, the result was the same. Without her signature, Alex's $500 billion triumph was impossible. Her phone rang. Gerald Cooper's name appeared on the screen. "Dr. Thornton," his voice was warm but concerned. "I have heard troubling news through our business networks. I wanted to reach out personally. Are you well?" "I have been better, Gerald. But I appreciate your concern. I want you to know that I value our professional relationship greatly. What your husband has done is dishonorable, and it puts our merger in a complicated position." "You knew this might happen," Molly said slowly, understanding dawning. "The dual approval clause. You were protecting me." "I was protecting our partnership," Gerald corrected gently. "I have watched many powerful men forget who actually built their empires. I did not want Alexander to have the power to erase you completely. You have a choice now, Dr. Thornton. Whatever you decide, I will respect." After they hung up, Molly sat staring at the contract. She had power. Real, undeniable, legally binding power. The question was what to do with it. Alex sat in his office surrounded by lawyers, finalizing documents for the signing ceremony scheduled in 72 hours. The press conference was planned. His speech was written. Vanessa had already selected her outfit for standing beside him during the announcement. "We will need Dr. Thornton's signature as well," the lead attorney mentioned casually, flipping through the Pacific Horizon contract. Clause 47.b requires dual approval from the CEO and the designated special strategic advisor. Alex looked up from his phone. "What are you talking about?" "The merger agreement requires 2 signatures. Yours and Dr. Molly Thornton's. It is right here in the contract you signed 6 months ago." The color drained from Alex's face. "No. I am the CEO. I sign for the company." The attorney showed him the clause. Alex read it once, twice, 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. "Why would I agree to this?" "You did agree to it, Mr. Thornton." Your signature is on the contract. Alex's hands started shaking. He had just fired, divorced, and publicly humiliated the one person whose approval he needed for the biggest deal of his career. He called Richard James immediately. "Why did you not tell me about this clause?" Richard's voice was cold. "I did tell you. 6 months ago. You said, and I quote, she will sign whatever I tell her to sign. She always does." "Well, obviously that has changed." "Yes, Alex. Publicly destroying your wife tends to change relationship dynamics." Alex tried calling Molly. Blocked. He drove to the penthouse. Locks changed. He went to her sister's house. Door slammed in his face. Vanessa's reaction evolved from dismissive to panicked as she understood the implications. Just make her sign it. Threaten her or pay her off or something. You do not understand. She holds all the power now. Without her signature, there is no deal. Well, fix it. You promised me we would announce this merger together. You promised I would be standing beside you when you became one of the most powerful people in the business world. Alex tried reaching Gerald Cooper directly. His calls went to voicemail. Gerald's assistant politely informed him that Mr. Cooper was unavailable but looked forward to the scheduled signing ceremony, assuming all required approvals were obtained. For the first time in years, Alexander Thornton felt genuinely afraid. His legacy, his triumph, his entire future depended on a woman he had just destroyed. And she was not answering his calls. Gerald Cooper met Molly at an exclusive tea house overlooking San Francisco Bay. His expression was gentle but serious. 40 years in business has taught me that character reveals itself in how people treat those they believe are powerless, Gerald said quietly. Alexander treated you as if you had no power. He was wrong. He laid out her options with careful precision. Option 1. Walk away completely. Refuse to sign. The merger dies, costing jobs and shareholder value but destroying Alex's legacy entirely. Option 2. Demand her rightful place. Sign the deal but negotiate terms, official C-suite title, equity stake, public recognition of her contributions to building Thornton Global Industries. Option 3. Take the high road. Sign without conditions. Let Alex have his moment. Prove she is better than his cruelty. What would you do? Molly asked. Gerald smiled slightly. I would ask myself what I have earned and what I deserve. Then I would take it. Margaret Hayes advised similarly. You have spent 15 years making him look good while making yourself invisible. Visibility has consequences. So does invisibility. Choose which consequences you want to live with. Molly spent 2 days wrestling with the decision. Her anger wanted vindication. Her values wanted integrity. Her exhausted heart wanted peace. Alex's voicemails alternated between apologetic and demanding. Vanessa left messages that started sympathetic and became threatening. Richard James sent a simple text, "You have a chance to rewrite this story. Do not waste it." Finally, Molly called Gerald back. "I know what I want," she said, her voice steady and sure. "I want what I have always deserved. Everything." The Pacific Horizon headquarters signing ceremony was packed with cameras, journalists, and industry leaders anticipating history. Alex arrived with Vanessa despite Richard's explicit advice against it, trying desperately to project confidence he did not feel. Gerald Cooper's greeting was ice-cold professional. His team's expressions showed obvious disapproval. The documents were presented. Alex signed with shaking hands, looking around constantly for Molly. "And now," Gerald announced to the assembled crowd, "we require Dr. Molly Thornton's approval, as contractually stipulated." The room stirred with surprise. Reporters whispered. Cameras turned toward the entrance. The door opened. Molly entered transformed, power suit, new hairstyle, radiating authority instead of accommodation. The broken woman from the elevator was gone. This was someone entirely different. She approached the contract slowly, reading each page with deliberate care while Alex sweated beside her. "Before I sign," Molly addressed the room clearly, "everyone should understand the full history of this partnership. She presented documentation systematically. Emails proving she negotiated the Japanese manufacturing deal Alex claimed as his breakthrough. Records showing she designed the Southeast Asian expansion strategy. Testimony from international partners confirming she built the relationships that made Thornton Global Industries viable in foreign markets. The room was stunned. Board members looked shocked. Journalists scribbled frantically. Vanessa's face showed dawning horror as she realized the man she had bet everything on was not the genius she thought. Molly stated her terms calmly. Official C-suite title as Chief Strategic Officer with equal executive authority. 25% equity stake. Public acknowledgement of her contributions in all press materials. Gerald agreed immediately. More than fair. And one final condition, Molly continued. Vanessa Reed's employment is terminated effective immediately for gross professional misconduct. Security escorted Vanessa out as she protested loudly. Alex, defeated and humiliated before the very cameras he had summoned for his triumph, nodded acceptance. Molly signed the document. Gerald stood to shake her hand. Finally, true partnership based on honesty. Cameras flashed. Molly stood tall while Alex realized exactly what he had lost and exactly what it had cost him. 3 months later, Molly sat in her corner office, her name on the door, Dr. Molly Thornton, Chief Strategic Officer, reviewing strategic proposals with genuine authority for the first time in 15 years. Business magazines ran profiles, the woman who built a $50 billion empire. Young women reached out asking for mentorship. Molly started a foundation supporting overlooked women in business. The Pacific Horizon merger exceeded projections. Gerald Cooper praised her leadership publicly and often. Alex remained CEO in title, but with real oversight now. Humbled, he attended therapy and slowly began understanding his mistakes. Their divorce proceeded civilly. In an elevator encounter, he apologized genuinely. "I am sorry. For everything. You deserved better." "Yes," Molly replied simply. "I did. But thank you for finally seeing it." Vanessa landed at a competitor in a mid-level position, her reputation damaged, her ambitions permanently thwarted. Molly's personal life blossomed. She dated again, rediscovered herself, surrounded herself with genuine friends who valued her for who she was rather than what she could provide. At dinner with Margaret Hayes and her sister Jennifer, Margaret raised a glass. "You know what the best part is? You did not do this to destroy him. You did it to save yourself." Molly stood at those same floor-to-ceiling windows from the opening scene, but now in her own office. No longer frozen in shock with hands over her mouth. Now she smiled, confident and finally visible. She picked up her business card, Dr. Molly Thornton, Chief Strategic Officer, Thornton Global Industries. "Some people think power is taken," she said quietly to her reflection. "But the truth is, it was always mine. I just had to remember that." The woman who had been invisible for 15 years was finally, undeniably seen. And she would never disappear again.